Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for inviting me to this year's event. I'm very happy to be part of it. It's a particularly beautiful place that you have chosen for your conference, and I always enjoy coming to Slovenia. I was asked to give a lecture on a particularly important topic in Germany. Well, I have a whole bundle of topics that seem to be important to me, and I have therefore made a selection and hope that I can offer you an overview of the current challenges of the asphalt industry in Germany. I would like to start my presentation with a short introduction of the German Association. Then I will make some remarks about the fundamental changes in the official organizations of road construction in Germany. Digitization or the digitalization is of course a special topic and has certainly been moving companies in Slovenia too. Of strong importance is the entire topic of the climate discussions, and which are particularly hefty in Germany, in our opinion. Considerable upheavals are to be expected in the coming years, which have already applied to environmental protection and legislation. And finally, a topic has also led to a particular unrest in other European countries, the discussion about the MAC values or binding workplace limit value for fumes from asphalt. But first I will start with a short presentation of my association so that you can see what we are dealing with. The DAV is a more technically oriented association that deals exclusively with asphalt. Other associations are responsible for raw material extractions or anything like that, the concrete industry or paving, building, and so on. This is of course it has advantages, in my opinion, so that we can concentrate entirely on the construction method asphalt, and we are not dependent on other interests. Our companies are direct members of the association, so a direct connection and short ways of communication are also guaranteed. As you may know, Germany, doesn't work. Now we are here. As you may know, Germany is a federal state with 16 federal states and many inhabitants, many asphalt companies. In addition, many laws are passed in the federal states that are important to us, and especially in the environmental sector. This is why we are also present in the regions and try to maintain contact with companies and authorities operating regionally. Our membership is quite typically structured. On the one hand, we have the full members. These are the asphalt manufacturers and asphalt builders. And on the other hand, we now have an equally large number of so-called associated members who are very interested in promoting the entire construction method asphalt and the networks of the association. Some of our members are internationally positioned and participate in this Congress. Finally, we offer individuals, scientific institutions and universities the opportunity to become members of the German Asphalt Institute. And the Asphalt Institute is particularly active in the field of industrial research and is also part of the association, of course. So, networks, of course, are also of great importance. This is just a small sample of our membership in other associations and institutions, and we are also member of a European umbrella organization, EAPA, as is ZAS. And we have the advantage that the General Secretary Carsten Karcher comes from Germany, but ZAS is also a very active, as it was meant before, also very active association in Europe, and Slovenko does not only speak English, but also excellent German. At this point, I must myself, of course, apologize for the fact that my Slovenian language skills are not particularly pronounced. But that should have it been it with the self-advertisement. Over the years, you accumulate, of course, also a whole quantity of knowledge. We publish this in the form of guidelines and are very pleased that these are also a good source of information for the authorities and the entire industry. In a way, this is how we formulate the state of the art and science in asphalt technology in Germany. Of course, I like to point out one event. On the 12th of February 2020, the German Asphalt Days will start again in Berchtesgaden. This is a quite big congress with an accompanying exhibition, very similar to the ZAS Colloquium, only a bit bigger. Our former Minister for Foreign Affairs will give a speech, and of course we will try to take up the current topics of the industry with lectures. The Bavarian Minister of Transport will open the event, and since Berchtesgaden is not so far away from here, we are naturally looking forward to every visit from Slovenia. However, we are not as progressive as ZAS, and the Congress will only be held in German language. I apologize for that too. Okay, that's supposed to be all to the association. Let us turn to the significant challenges in Germany, and there is a very special change to be mentioned. Germany is in the process of implementing the largest reform of its road administration since the end of the Second World War. From 2021, many responsibilities for motorways and transnational roads will be transferred from the states, the federal state, such as Bavaria, for example, to one federal organization. This is the so-called Autobahn GmbH. Infrastructure as a whole has gained importance in Germany. For many years, the roads in Germany have not been sufficiently financed. Not enough funds have been made available for maintenance, and as a result, the condition of the roads gradually deteriorated. At the same time, however, the volume of traffic grew and continues to grow. A few years ago, the federal government of Germany finally recognized this, and since then, sufficient money has again been made available for investments. We are talking about 8 billion now, which are here stated. So, but the only problem is that now everything has to be repaired at the same time. Also, the bridges in Germany were mostly never meant to carry out our today's freight traffic. And it makes sense to me to set up this Autobahn GmbH if you look at how many federal states such a motorway crosses. Strategic planning from a single source is obvious. For example, here the A7, which goes from north to south, or south to north, as you like it. The Autobahn GmbH can also be compared to Asfinag in Austria, in any case. This was also a model for the new structuring, even though the car toll in Germany failed due to a judgment of a European Court of Justice, which was initialized by Austria. Well, in the future, Autobahn GmbH will, of course, continue to be present with offices in the regions, but the decisive difference is now that the complete planning, construction, maintenance and administration is the responsibility of only one organization. A great challenge, however, is to transfer all tasks from the regional authorities to this organization, and this in such a short time. We are assuming that this will bring with a few more years of change and that friction losses will also occur. It will certainly take a few more years for the system to function properly. Well, digitalization or digitization is a big issue. This applies not only to the type of road construction, but also to the conversion of technology by manufacturers and asphalt mixing plants. We need to focus on ensuring that the processes mesh like gears, and this requires new investments, greater standardization, and at least staff training. I think digitization is a never-ending topic, and at that point some of the speakers at the Congress have much more to say than I do. But digitalization also offers many opportunities to optimize and accelerate the entire construction process. In the end, the decisive factor is how well Germany, from my point of view, is making overall progress in digitalization. Many smaller countries are already well ahead of us in this respect. But where nobody is really ahead of us, that is with the environmental protests. Germans can get very passionate about that. My impression is that we are discussing climate protection particularly radically. Please don't misunderstand me. The topic is an enormously important one, probably the greatest challenge for all of us. However, I am often disturbed by the radical nature of individual demands that have nothing to do with reality. Nevertheless, the reduction of CO2 is a major political goal of the German government. I think this issue will become even more important. Now, for the first time, new regulations and savings targets are being created for the housing and transport sectors, but new demands are also likely to be placed on industry in the near future. I'm quite sure about that. As an asphalt industry, we must therefore already position ourselves and emphasize the environmental friendliness of our product. As you know, the recycling rate in Germany is very high. And I think this is a great advantage over concrete, for example, and helps us in the discussion. There's also a potential for reducing emissions. And this applies in particular to fuels, but also to the further development of warm mix asphalt. We see great opportunities here to further develop asphalt as a green building material. Until then, unfortunately, we always have to deal with exaggerated demands from environmental authorities. A particularly blatant example is the demand from authorities for several years now for the installation of a continuous measurement of carbons at asphalt mixing plants. However, these measuring systems do not work. These are continuously operating systems. However, asphalt production is not a continuous process. It is discontinuous. The measurement results, therefore, make no sense at all. Some German authorities, however, seem to have bitten their teeth into this idea. And since the measuring devices are extremely expensive, investments in plant technology have also been postponed for years now, and we are fighting against this with technical expertise. So maybe you are still in a paradise. What is ongoing with the continuous measurements? So, a very important topic and major problem in recent months has been the discussion about the introduction of new limit values for asphalt workers. Last year, the so-called MAC Commission, which is an independent, highly scientific body for so far, recommended very low limit values. And these values are normally adopted as binding values after a few years. But here the time ran faster than we expected. This is exactly what happened last week. The competent committee of the working ministry decided to introduce this very low limit value for bitumen fumes. But with one important restriction, which I will explain in a moment. The only problem is that these new limits are so extremely low. They are supposed to be a factor of 1.5. However, when bitumen is processed, exposures of up to a factor of 12 are realistic. And at some workplaces, in any case, this follows from our previous measurements, and there, of course, is a big problem with that. Production and processes within the mixing plants are not so problematic. Here, the limit values can already be complied with today, and transporting the asphalt is also no problem, so far as I would say. But the question arises all when paving the asphalt. And paver drivers and the so-called screed leaders regularly have the highest expositions. According to earlier measurements, the loads here were well above the new limit value. The situation is also reasonably good for the roller drivers, as the caps provide a certain degree of shielding from the fumes, so they are out too. But what can be done to prevent the use of breathing protection, which cannot be the solution? What are the possibilities here? Of course, there are a few things you can do here. And according to previous findings, two measures are particularly effective in reducing exposure. Firstly, there's the possibility of equipping the paver vehicles with extraction devices. All manufacturers have this option in their range, and in France, for example, we know only pavers with these extraction devices are sold. And on the other hand, the increased use of temperature-reduced or low-temperature asphalt is a good option. The technology was actually invented in Germany, but has hardly been used so far. And on the other hand, other countries in Europe have been using considerable quantities of warm-mix asphalt for quite some time, for example in France and the Netherlands or Scandinavian countries. Initial measurements have shown, which are recently followed, have shown that these measures are effective, and compliance with a new limit value is therefore also possible, especially when the two measures are combined. So if a company's vehicles fleets are adapted over the next years and increased support from the warm mix asphalt can take place, there's an opportunity to solve this problem. This brings me back to my statement that the new workplace limit value was adopted last week. The limit value will be suspended for a period of 5 years from now. And during this period, the construction industry will have to adapt and check whether exposures can be reduced to the limit value. I hope this will work. And for some products, however, technical solutions have yet to be developed. One of the most important of these is mastic asphalt, which generally requires a higher temperature. And for the use of mastic asphalt as screed in buildings, I do not yet see any solution, even if I think more carefully. So, this was one of the last topics, and as you can see, there's no shortage of risks and opportunities in Germany either. And with these words, I would like to say thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Bokies. That was an excellent start to our expert panel.